Hi, my name is Sam Johnson and I am a voice teacher. Today I'm going to be reacting to and analyzing Francita Ayala performing Hamilton's Burn. So this is a fan-submitted video. I've never heard the singer before. I don't know what to expect, but I'm going to treat it like I would just a first lesson coming into me.
I saved every letter you wrote to me. From the moment I read them, I knew you were mine. You said you were mine. I thought you were mine.
Oh, I hear a little tongue tension.
Do you know what Angelica said when we saw your first letter arrive? She said, be careful with that one, love. He will do what it takes to survive. You and your words flooded my senses. Your sentences left me defenseless. You built me palaces out of paragraphs. You built cathedrals.
So far, when it started, I heard a little bit of extra breathiness. It was a little bit light. The first thing that I listen for is whether something is too heavy or too light. And for me, I would have said it was just a little bit light and just a little bit of extra tension. Some of it was coming from her jaw. You can see her jaw coming forward just a little bit. And I heard a little bit of tongue tension, mostly on some of the words where it sounded less authentically American. So I think that working on the pronunciation would be a really good start, because then you'd be able to fix how she's holding her tongue, how she's holding her jaw, and make it disconnected from singing, because you can bring it back to speech. And if you can get it feeling really, really good and even with speech, then going back to singing isn't such a big change.
I'm rereading the letters you wrote to me. I'm searching and scanning for answers in every line.
But for me right there, that sounds pretty even to me. That doesn't sound like it's too heavy. It just sounds like her chin is out a little bit and it's becoming a little bit of a tighter sort of vowel. So again, that's where going back to speech is a really good thing. If you can pronounce it here, then when you go over to sing it, you should hopefully be able to pronounce it there, rather than going to when you're pronouncing it and singing.
For some kind of sign when you were mine, the world seemed to burn.
So with those ones, I just want a little bit more consonant at the beginning. It sounded a little bit more like p rather than b. And then at the end, I would love for you to just vibrate through those ends. So burn rather than burn. It just kind of dropped off at the end. I want just a little bit more consonant definition.
You published the letters she wrote to you. You told the whole world how you brought this girl into our bed.
Just a little more definition would be nice with the consonants.
Do you know what Angelica said when she read what
So
you...
right there, I don't think it was very hard for you. I don't think that you needed to squint your face up like that unless it's what the character would do. So see if you can try doing that without doing that with your face. With Angelica versus with Angelica. Just because adding that little bit of face squint will make a little bit of extra tension in ways that you might not want. So if you're able to get rid of that and just pronounce it how you would in speech, then you can start bringing it more to how the character would be using their face in this action, rather than right now we don't really have any character. And that's the next thing that I would really love to see you start including, is how would you sing this as the character rather than just as you?
Done, she said, you've married an Icarus. He has flown too close to the sun. You and your words obsessed with your legacy. Your sentences for their own senses, and you are paranoid in every paragraph how they perceive you.
Nice.
You.
I like a lot of what you're doing. It's just a little bit tight. I think that some of it is your posture. I see your shoulders hunched a little bit. Maybe if we can bring those back and keep your chest a little bit more open, that would help with a little bit of the consistency or the thing that I'm hearing. And another thing is your chin is just out a little bit like this, and I think it's from your neck. So thinking about your spine going all the way up to the base of your head and just being a little bit straighter might be a nice way to make these adjustments. And I think that it would affect your sound a little bit. It wouldn't sound quite as constrained. The thing is, though, you have a really nice sound. It's very even, it's clear, it just has a little bit of this tonal problem to it. Another thing, though, before I start going back into the next part, when you start leaning into things, as you start getting loud, it's trying to add a little bit of extra push into it rather than just using the same coordination that you have and getting more intense with it. So because that's an issue, I would say that adding a little bit more chord closure throughout your whole range might be a good thing, because I did hear it as a little bit light at the beginning. Even though it's clear, it still could have a little bit more moderate chord closure. I think that would give you the dynamics that you're looking for a little bit more, because I hear you trying to get louder at some parts and it's just not really holding. So start with just adding a little bit more chord closure, and then we can start controlling it a little bit more.
I'm erasing myself from the narrative.
At the beginning of that one, she started with Heim. She started with that air going, which is not going to help the vocal cords come together very much. For there, I would start a little bit more like I'm. One of those ones where the air and the muscle come together a little bit sooner rather than just air and then the muscle kind of comes together. Because the goal is to add a little bit more chord closure, we're going to resist that feeling of just letting the air start first and get used to what it feels like to have the muscle start a little bit more prominently.
Let future historians wonder how Eliza reacted when you broke her heart. You have torn it all apart and watching it burn.
Good. As you went up to the high one, think about a little bit narrower of a vowel though, because it went to burn instead of burn. Pronounce it the same way that you had at the bottom, because the bottom was more buh. It was a little bit wide, so maybe even if we could bring that one in, buh versus buh, burn, burn. It's just a little bit of a change in your mouth, but the resulting tone is drastically different.
Watching it burn.
Nice, that was good. It's just a little bit spread still.
The world has no place in our bed. They don't get to know what I said. I'm burning the memories, burning the letters that might have redeemed you. You forfeit your right to my heart. You forfeit the place in our bed. You sleep in your office instead, with only the memories of when you were mine.
Nice. Just don't close until the very end, until you get to the N. Mine versus mine. So make sure that you're doing that, and then see if we can bring that vowel a little bit closer to also. Mine versus mine. It'll just round out the sound a little bit more, and that's one of the things that your voice needs, is just a little bit more roundness and a little bit more depth. So what I'm hearing right now is you are letting it move up and down between your chest and head. You're not getting super stuck, which is absolutely my first choice. That's the first thing that I try to help with a student, is to make sure that they're not just getting stuck in chest or stuck in head for the whole thing, but that they can let it move around. The thing is, though, you have a little bit of inconsistent vocal cord closure all the way through, and that's why at the top, like the very, very high notes, it gets a little bit lighter, and at the bottom, it gets a little bit heavier, and so there's that inconsistency. I love squeaky hums and NGs, so doing it on getting used to that same feeling moving up and down, but holding on to that NG feeling might help to even everything out a little bit more. That's kind of the first step that I'd work with right now, though, is just making sure that you have even chord closure all the way through.
I hope that you
See, that's nice. That sounds super easy. It just let go at the end and got a little bit breathier. So awesome. Thank you so much for submitting this. It takes a lot of courage to be able to put yourself out there like this. So really, there's so much good going on. You're letting it move between your chest and head. There's an overall connecting sound. It's just a little bit inconsistent with your vocal cord closure. So making sure that we're not starting everything with air, just with because then you'll run out of air really, really fast. Just a little bit more chord closure, I think, will help even out the entire song. The other thing to work on is making sure that the pronunciation is a little bit more in line with traditional American pronunciation. That'll help just even things out a little bit more. And in classical singing, there's a huge onus on trying to sound authentic to whatever language you're singing in, whether it's French or Italian or whatever. Classical singers spend a ton of time learning how to pronounce things in different languages. I know that we're not singing classical music right now, we're singing musical theater, but the same thing kind of needs to happen. Whatever language you're singing in, it's important to be as authentic to the language as possible. So there were just a few things where like you were voicing it or unvoicing it when you didn't need to, like on Pern, where it went a little more to the p rather than to the bigger burn, where you're voicing it all the way through rather than p, because that's the difference, is one is voiced and one's unvoiced. So there was something like that, and there were just some little parts where the definition of those consonants wasn't quite as clear as I think that you can get, and so it made it harder to understand the whole line. I wasn't really focused on that as much this listen through, because my focus is more on what you're doing vocally that's working and what that could be improved a little bit. But as you're improving this, the next step, because you're doing everything well, you're singing it pretty well all the way through. After you work out having a little bit more chord closure, work on the words, making sure that they're as authentic as you can get it and as understandable all the way through. And then after that, it's putting it into character, because I didn't see any character with this. I just kind of saw you pronouncing everything in your room as you, but just as much as you can get into the character and say these words the way that that character would say those words. It gets you out of yourself and it gets you performing rather than thinking about technique, because what we're doing right now is technique work, but when you're performing, you don't want to think about technique the whole time. You want to think about character. And so the sooner that you can start getting into that, the easier it's going to be to start performing it as a character and staying in that character for a whole song, rather than having it come in really intensely for a little bit and then we get to an instrumental bit and are just sitting here for a little bit waiting for it to come back in, and then we're back into it because the instrumental's over and we're singing again. We want to be able to hold on to that character all the way through. So those are the 3 steps. 1 with technique, make sure that we're just not letting go all the way through, that we're having a little bit more chord closure, just a teeny bit all the way through. 2 is making sure that the English is pronounced well all the way through and it's understandable. And 3 is character work, because you're ready for that. You're singing things well enough. It won't throw out everything if you start focusing on character work. So really nice stuff, actually. It's a good foundation, and I'm excited to see what kind of improvements you can make in the future. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Go check out the description below where I have links to my Instagram, my Patreon, and my website. And leave a comment below of something that you learned from this and how you can apply it to your own practice. Thank you.